Welcome to our March podcast, Oconee Captains. With me today is Master Captain. Congratulations on that too, man, really, by the way. Master Captain Jody Stevens just got his master's certification, and it's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. And the application went through on the first attempt.
Yeah.
It took them 4 weeks to get it through the system.
Well, you know, you done kind of got it figured out now. I mean, that stuff is kind of fresh in your mind, so it was a lot easier to do.
Yep.
I think it took me, I think I had to do twice. I think Ron John, it took him twice or three times to get his.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Yeah, you got to read it and double check it 14 times before you send it, I guess. You know?
All right, so it's March, and we're crappie fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't we crappie fishing? Golly, I mean, we are. This is the time of the year that and that's what we're going to talk more about today. We're going to talk about crappie fishing, talk a little bit about the derby. Those long 16-foot Wally Marshall rods that sit in my garage 10 months out of the year, they're off the walls now, and we are doing really good. And you've been pushing a lot and catching some nice fish. Well,
you've been pushing a lot.
Oh, you've been pulling a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say, we're going to talk. We are not going to disagree today. We're going to talk about the advantages. The reason Jody is here and I'm here, we're going to talk about the advantages of pushing and pulling. And if I run afoul and get them, just correct me.
Oh, I will.
Okay, just make sure that you.
Because it's more fish and less fish and bigger fish. And, yeah. Tell you a quick little story about Doug years ago. You know, I started out being a pusher and that sort of thing or whatever like that. And then I kind of went, as he would term, to the dark side. Well, it was one day out there, you know, it's like fish after fish after fish after fish, long lining, and he looks over there and he is just cussing me under his breath. Guess who's pulling some now?
Yeah, you kind of like embarrassed me pretty big that day. I told him, like, the other day when we were out there and you were coming up, I said, "Now I'm going to tell y'all, he's about to put a show on right here in front of everybody, but they're all going to be peanuts."
Well, that's not always the case by any means, but it is entertaining.
Man, we have a fun time doing this, don't we? I mean, it's great.
Sure.
We have a ball. Before we actually get into how Jody pulls and how I push, and again, if I get mixed up on that, let me know. Our derby is going wide open right now. We are into week 3. We're actually doing this podcast. What is today? Today is Tuesday.
Tuesday the 5th.
The 5th. So we're kind of behind. We typically try to get it out by the 1st. And no one has posted a fish this week. But last week, Chad Womack. Chad, I hope I'm saying your name right because I know it's not Womack, but I hope I'm saying it. Anyhow, Chad posted a 2-pound, 3-ounce crappie Sunday morning. And took the division over. He's the overall leader, and he also won week 2. And Justin Michaels is the leader in the striper division. He's got a 10-pound and change striper, really cool fish. Danny Bruce won the second week division. Did you know that he won?
Yeah, I saw the info.
Second week division, second week striper division with a 6-pound and something. Anyhow, Danny and Chad this week last week won 2 Ceto packages, the gold package that Captain John Gridley provides for us every year. John's supported this derby ever since we started, and we really do appreciate him doing that. He owns Ceto Oconee, Ceto Sinclair, Ceto Altoona, Ceto Clark Hill. And I think he said he led the nation last year in salvages, that's really something. But thanks, John, for doing that. We really do appreciate it. You're a good guy. And so the weekly division's open right now. You could have weighed that 115.
I could, yeah. I could have waited yesterday. I was on a scouting mission after my guide trip yesterday morning, and I'm like, ugh,
Yeah.
you know, I let her swim.
You'd be in first place right now if you were.
Yeah, okay, all right, thanks for reminding me.
And so it's wide open right now. Of course, we have our overall division, which, like Chad's fish, it's the first crappie we've got over 2 pounds since we started. And that will carry, of course, until somebody bumps him off. And everybody's gunning for him now. So we couldn't do this great derby with all the camaraderie and the fun and the hoot and the hound if it wasn't for the guys at Sugar Creek Marina, William and Mike. Just, you know, if any of you guides watching this, your wish would be to have a couple of guys like this that would own a marina in your area on your lake, and it would take as good a care of the guides as these guys do. They're just incredible. Whatever we need.
I think I dropped about $600 or $800 here last week for customer boats and stuff like that, help rigging and that sort of thing.
And I bet you got it cheaper probably than you did anywhere
else. Oh heck yeah,
too.
Yeah, they got some of the best prices in the world.
I don't know how they do it. I asked Mike just a couple days ago. I said, man, I compared your Rodley and Cabela's. He's like, well, Cabela's is expensive, but
yeah,
I've never really thought that. But to give you an example, I'm running Millennial rod lockers on my rod holders on my boat. Cabela's, I just ran this price. Cabela sells them for $170. You can get them at Sugar Creek for $135, and they're really good.
And it's the new design too.
Yes,
it's not the old; it's the new design.
It's the oval that I actually have one on the boat, and it works. I think it works better than the old design. Jiffy jigs, light wire hooks. Richard Malcolm was telling me about a Falcon dock shooting rod that he actually sent me last night. He said it's like $70 on the eBay or something, and he said that Williams got it for like $39 or something. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's got to be a solid one-piece rod.
Yeah. On
that deal, and Richard knows his dock shooting stuff. That's
yeah,
for sure.
And we're going to have him and Ninja. I think next. I didn't tell you about this, but two of probably the best dock shooters for crappie that we have on this lake. They're going to be in the podcast in April, so we're going to have to. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'll play referee.
They've got Coastal Sunglasses, G. Loomis rods, Shimano reels, fishing wear, Zoom baits, tons of bass tackle.
Bait tanks. They got really good bait tanks up there.
Yeah. Too.
The keep alive bait tanks. I think. You know. So he's got it all. And if he doesn't have it, he'll get it.
Yeah. All of Max, Capt Max stuff. U-rigs, which in May we'll start pulling them real strong, and we'll tell you all about that. And whenever we get to that point, Mini Max are starting to work really good on the lake for stripers. And I know this is March, and you know I'm going to slowly transition to stripers by the end of this month, even though next month in April we will do we'll have the dock shooters here, and we'll talk a little bit about crappie, because your game goes up real hard then. I'll be probably moved to stripers, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that. But yeah, stop by Sugar Creek. I think you'll really be impressed and amazed at the stuff that they have there.
Country ham and egg biscuits.
Yeah, they have. Somebody used to say they got
fried chicken,
the best fried chicken in the world.
I'll tell you real quick. I had for lunch the other day. I had a chicken biscuit with a little mayo and pickles on it, just like a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Oh, it's sinful.
I can't eat that stuff, man.
Yeah, I hear you.
Was it keto friendly?
And yeah, well, I don't know what her name was, but she was friendly.
All right, so we're going to talk. Yeah, we're going to talk about. It's just Jody and I. We're going to talk about, and we kind of feel like we don't. It could be hubris, but we kind of feel like we're probably pretty good at our game. Maybe not the best, but pretty good at our game. This is the only nice thing that I'm going to say about Jody. He's probably the best. I don't think nobody on the lake can pull any as good as he does. He's really got that down. But we're going to talk about pushing first. And if you will, just real quick, just let me go over. A couple of you guys asked, you see these reels on my boat, And you're like, what is the heck of that with all them green handles on it? That's cute, isn't it? Get these things off of eBay for about 11 bucks. They're actually an ice reel, believe it or not. $12.50 is what you can look for spending on them. I put them all on 16-foot rods, and you know why I have small handles on it already? It's because most people, when they, we guide, of course, and sometimes first time you ever had anybody on the boat's ever done this, and can you imagine? I mean, a lot of people fish you 16-foot rods. Just if you fished all your life, you can't handle them, and of course, when a big crappie bows that rod down, it's a natural reaction for people to start reeling. And so this kind of prevents it, and I can also put them a little tighter. But typically, if they can't get their hand on it, because when we catch them, we have to strip line out. And it's a glorified cane pole action. And anyhow, so I wanted to show you this really quick. Right now on the lake, these black and blue Jiffy jigs with the blue glitter, because the lake is so muddy, they seem to be... They're the ticket right now. Oh,
by the way, I caught a longline fish the other day, and it had one of those in its mouth. So
really?
Oh yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. Saturday morning. I think it was.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, pulled him up there, and he had a Jiffy jig and a leader hanging out of his mouth. And
was it a big fish?
It was a fairly big fish, but the thing about it is, his mama should have told him. It's like, you should have learned from the first mistake.
Yeah, because I guess he went in the live well, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, this black and blue glitter seems to work really good. Call the guys at Jiffy Jigs. You can go by Sugar Creek Marina and get these. Plenty of them there. This is one of our favorite colors. That we were not going to argue about which is the best thing to do. There's the bobber stoppers. I think I actually had the camera on Jody when I was doing this. And there's a leader and tied on there. If it breaks off, you can push this back up. So I wanted to make sure everybody saw that.
Now, Doug, what pound main line do you use? Are you 6 pound throughout, or?
Yeah, you know what I've started doing, because this is Red Label that we use. Is it Seagar?
Seagar Red Label Fluoro.
This is their Seagar Red Label Fluoro. Williams sells it. And what I started doing now is, like, because on these reels here, like you can put a ton of line on there. I've started putting like 12-pound backing, just like you would a fly rod. And I only put like 70 or 80 yards of this. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. About 70 or 80 yards of this fluoro on there. That way I can, I got 12 rods, so I can do the whole set.
Sure.
In just 70 or 80.
Well, like on my setup, I've got 14-foot pushing rods, which are still on the ceiling, by the way, but that's for another day. 10-pound main line down to a 1.5 ounce, 1 3/4 or so trolling sinker, inline barrel swivel trolling sinker, and a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader off that, Jiffy jig, tip with a minnow or whatever. And if I get hung up, I can usually snap my leader off, and I haven't lost a trolling sinker in 5 years. Just because it's. But I don't know how. Do you lose a lot of that rig sometimes, or does it tend to break off down there?
Not really. Every now and again you do. But typically it will break off. It'll break off
down at the knot.
Yeah, typically it does, and sometimes after time on.
Well, and now another point too, because if you want to go into 2 foot of water or so, you can slide that weight down and have it barely below the surface. Where with me, I'm either going to have my weights out of the water or retie everything. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it, and that's a really, really good method right there too with the bobber stoppers.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let me tell you why I like to push, and you can comment on that, and then we'll get to the advantages of pulling. I personally think that you get bigger fish when you push. Now, there's been a lot of big fish. Again, we're going to agree to talk about the advantages, the pros, and not the cons on this. It's kind of how I was taught. These old guys on the lake, Santa Claus, George Cox, Mikey Doo, Mr. Jennings, that whole group, that's kind of all they did. I remember the first time I ever seen somebody pushing, I'm like, what in the world is this? I never, all these rods around the boat. But the idea I think behind it is because this is moving it's got a minnow on it and it's moving half a mile an hour.
Maybe.
Just real slow. And we kind of think that the big girls, they tend to like, they will actually, I mean, when Richard is here next month, he'll tell you about slab slobber and how it works, but they actually go up and pull the water off of it and taste it before they ever touch it. And I do believe that, and I think that's kind of how the big girls do. So you're moving really slow. I think you catch bigger fish. I think all the fish that we have weighed in, maybe for the exception of one, me and Kevin argue about this all the time, but all the fish that we've weighed in the Derby have all been pushing fish. Now, I think a pulling fish won it last year, but that was kind of at the end of it. Another reason what Jody just said is that you can really get shallow with them. I mean, there are days that when we go and pull up, this is actually out of the water.
Oh, yeah. Kevin was kicking up mud on his trolling motor the other day. He was going so shallow with them.
Yeah.
You know, experimenting and that sort of stuff. You know, I can't do that pulling.
No.
You know, so.
Yeah, but, you know, when they run up and they start doing their schooling, I mean, their spawning thing, I mean, there are days that when those rods are out there and when a fish eats it because it's so shallow, it's got nowhere to go, the rod don't go down, it goes this way or that way. And another thing I think is an advantage of it is that you can really control your depth. I have a hard time keeping up with 1/32 and 1/24 going at, oh my God. And I'm going to let you talk about that in just a second.
Yeah.
But that just absolutely drives me bananas to know what the depth is. And most of the time, I can't even figure out what the depth is until I actually see it on my depth finder and run over something and watch the line start dragging. But we'll get on that in just a second. But you can control the depth, your depth. So you know if you're in 2 foot of water, you know if you're a foot down. That's another advantage of it. And you can sit on them, and that's another cool thing. Whereas like when you roll over fish and you get them, you got to make that big long loop, right, and come back to them. Whereas whenever we push. And just the other day in Sugar Creek, this was going. I found a group, and all I was doing was just spinning the boat around. And that's the day you were up there, and you were coming through and making these long pulls. And it's funny because Jody and I get out there right beside each other, and you kind of get to see how it happens. But that's the whole idea behind pushing. That's what it's how I love to fish. Now I do pull. Don't think for 1 minute I don't. I got a whole set of pulling rods, and we're going to talk about. You know, when we get on this, but anything that I miss? Any advantage to pushing?
No, I mean it's precise depth control. It is sitting on them. It's going ultra shallow. It's going in the sticks and the stuff. If you're willing to get in there and get hung up and things like that, I can't do that pulling without, you know. I mean, it's just one of those things. But yeah, I mean, you know, you got some definite strong points there. And then another thing too about people when it comes to pulling or pushing, it's style. You know, me, I started out pushing. I still do it some, don't do it that much. I feel like I need to take a Valium when I push. I mean, it is slow. You know, where I don't ever know who's going to get my boat and that sort of stuff. And when I'm pulling, you know, I got kids wrestling on the front deck. I was like, hey, fish on back here. Okay, whether you run back there and catch fish. It can be experienced anglers, it can be inexperienced anglers, it can be kids, it can be whatever, and nobody has to be real still. It's like the difference between sitting in a box stand over a trophy deer plot.
You're right. You're right.
Opposed to being on a dove field and saying, like, you know, sitting here talking to Doug like right now and going, you know, birds, and you know, and that sort of stuff. It's just total opposite ends of the spectrum, really.
Yeah.
With the same goal in mind, but I don't know. It's like basketball and chess.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's easier. I think it's more kid friendly. It's why I do it, because like when someone calls me and says, "Hey, I want to go catch a bunch of crappie," and I'm like, "Oh yeah," and it's in February and March when we're pushing. I got a 10-year-old I want to bring. I'm like, nah, you know, this is grown man fishing, and I don't know if you really want to do that.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So I wrote down the advantages. I think you catch more fish. Would you agree?
As far as long lining?
Yeah.
Pulling? Yeah. I mean, I think that on the average, yeah. I would think that on an average day of pushing and an average day of long lining, I'm probably going to catch 3 times as many.
Yeah.
But sometimes the size may not be all that great. But then again, there's a whole different thing to a mindset. And let's talk just for a second about guides and tournament fishermen. Okay, you'll find some tournament fishermen like Scott Williams, a good friend of mine, which talked to him today, as a matter of fact. Scott can go from single pole jigging to shooting docks to long lining to pushing, all in the same boat and stuff like that. I mean, they are, and they're having a hell of a year. So I'm real proud for Scott and his dad, Billy. But when you're looking at pulling, it's faster. You can cover 3 times, 4 times more water. I mean, I can cover, if I'm going a mile an hour and I fish 8 hours, I'm covering 8 miles of water. You're covering 3 miles of water.
Right, yeah.
Okay, a whole different deal there. I've seen it to where I've gone and I've got a customer that says, I want to learn how to push and then I want to learn how to pull. Same deal. I go, okay, fine, we're going to do that. We go over a group of fish pushing, catch 2, 1, 2, 3, whatever. Go over that same group of fish pulling, I can't beat them off the rods.
Right.
Because I think that they're sitting there going, oh, well, there's an opportunity, and they don't have time to inspect it, where they swim up to that pushing bait and they taste it and they're like,
Yeah. So let me ask you this: do you think? So you're basically saying that a pulling fish is a more of a reaction bite than a.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, and because they see something swim by, it's an opportunist type situation. They're going to eat it. They don't have time to inspect it. They got to make a split decision, and they're going to eat that bait.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I'm covering a lot more water and things of that nature. And then once again, just you don't have to buy minnows. You don't have to worry about keeping minnows alive. It doesn't matter who gets in the boat. I like it. Now, I like pushing. Like you and I go pushing and stuff like that. I love that stuff. Customer fishing, me personally, not so much.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything you're saying because, you get out of their boat and everybody starts bullwhipping those fish and you go through the whole tutorial and you tell everybody how to do it, but if you've never dealt with it, and I'm over there watching you and you got a 4-year-old on the back. Matter of fact, a funny story the other day. I don't know if you even recall doing this, but when we were at Sugar Creek fishing, and my guys were on the seats, they're on the front of the boat, and they're watching. We got all the lines, and you're rolling by us, and your 3 guys are on the front of the boat talking and drinking and having a good time, and you got like 2 fish on the back holding the rods up, and they weren't even looking at you.
Oh, no. They were just like, where can I set my beer down and go catch this fish? Yeah.
You're like, y'all this? And I told him, I said, hey, bring it over here. We'll reel it in,
Yeah.
It is, I do think it's a lot easier. All right, tell everybody, I know we've kind of done this on a podcast before, but tell everybody kind of what your setup is and what do you do. Talk about your method, then I'm going to tell everybody about kind of how I do mine. The different rod lengths and everything.
All right, as far as my boat, I've got a 19-foot center console C Pro. I found out a long, long time ago that it's a whole lot easier to pull everything from, 3/4 of the way back to the back, meaning that I don't pull any rods out of the front of my boat. Okay? Doing that, if you're a recreational angler and you've got 2 people in your boat, that's the way to do it. Have a guy up front, a guy in the rear, and that sort of stuff. When it comes to customers, turning and having to manage, and it's just better. I went to the rear of everything years ago. 2 16s, 2 12s, and 6 8s. Okay, I'm pulling 10 rods. Well, if you do the math on that, okay, 16 and 12 and 8, there's 4 foot of separation in between tips. You create a lane. Okay. Fish hits, boom, you want to try to keep that fish in your lane as best possible. Rod up steady, hold it steady, no pumping, no quick action, stuff like that. Good steady reel, trying to work that fish up to the surface and have him lay on his side so you can ski him to the boat, down that lane. Now, people get on there, like yesterday, I went out on a scouting mission after my guide trip yesterday morning and got on some nice big fat crappie. Well, you can't manhandle these big fish. I've got a 16-foot rod and stuff, and that's a lot of pressure and stuff. If that fish has to cross and things like that, sometimes you got to do the best you can do with what you can do. I can always cut and retie or get tangles out or whatever. Let's just get the fish in. But everything's out of the back of the boat. Rod tip placement is fairly low to the water. That way the wind doesn't affect anything and it tracks better and that sort of stuff. Sometimes I pull singles, sometimes, or most of the time I pull doubles and stuff. And we'll get into that water depth type situation and things of that nature. Dark colored body, chartreuse tails, and darker water, stained water, stuff like that. Lighter color stuff in the summertime when they're in the submerged timber, and I'm, that just kind of matching, as they say, match the hatch kind of thing. Well, I'm just matching visibility is what I'm doing.
Line, pound, and brand of line that you use.
My favorite line, because I go through a lot of it. Now, there's good stuff out there, but the Mr. Crappie High Vis 6-pound is my preference because it's cheap, but it's good. It's made by Lew's. It's got low memory. Now, I will give a plug to my buddy Noah up at Real Snot up in, I think he lives in Connecticut. I met him, long story, bass fishing one day or something down at Lake Creek. Real Snot, if you guys want to look up realsnot.com, it is the absolute best line conditioner I've ever used. It coats on crazy good, stays on there, makes things soft and more pliable and manageable and stuff like that. So check those guys out on realsnot.com. Also, too, 6-pound Mr. Crappie High Vis. You got to have high vis line because you got to see how things are running, see if something's messed up or whatever the case may be. ACC crappie sticks. Jonathan Phillips, my tournament buddy, got me hooked up with ACC crappie sticks earlier this year. By far the best long lining rod I've ever used. Solid backbone, great handles, and just really good reel seats and stuff. Andy Lehman, ACCCrappieSticks.com. Fantastic stuff. Got several of my customers that have ordered them just because they've been in my boat. And I go, oh, God, I got to have these. So, really, really good stuff.
Yeah. My setup is similar, but not as much. I use 9-foot rods. I fish 8 out the back. And I do what I call the shuffle. Jody doesn't have a TV top on his boat. I do on mine. So whipping a 16-foot rod could probably get in the way. So I just use 9-footers, and I fish them out of those Millennium rod holders. And so a lot of times when it gets crazy, and it does whenever you're pulling, I'll tell my customer, just take the rod and throw it out as far as you can away from all the other rods. Because if I'm not mistaken, you basically cast all your rods yourself, right?
Yeah, I got 2 hooks in the face one time.
Yeah.
And so I tend to, unless it's friendly fishing and me and you or buddy or whatever like that.
You're going to throw out yourself.
Because it's placement and distance and safety.
Yeah. Well, for me, if it gets really crazy, I can have them throw out. And what we do is, you got 3 rods sitting there. Doesn't matter where that rod came from. They're all the same length. They will throw out, and then I could tell them shuffle them. So if there's 3 in a rod holder, then you take and move the 3 over and set the 1 there. This one goes off, same thing. Instead of me trying to get them to throw back to the middle. And they're all the same rod, same length, so it works out pretty good. And I'll start doing a lot of that more during the summer. So just humor me. A double 16th. I'm sorry, a 1/32 double running at 1 mile an hour is going to be how deep?
Double 30 seconds at 1 mile an hour, about 3.5 feet deep.
Okay.
But now,
double.
I'm gonna throw an asterisk in there with you. People ask me all the time. They get on their boat and they say, "Well, how deep does this run?" Don't know. Have you found out? Well, what are you talking about? I said every boat's different. Okay. Yeah. Case in point. A single 1/16 at 1 mile an hour with my boat, with my setup, with 6-pound test line is going to run about 5.5 feet deep. I set up a customer's pontoon boat. I had to pull a single 1/8 to get it that deep.
Because freeboard is higher?
Because the freeboard's a lot higher. Yeah. It was more line out of the water than in the water.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
I'm telling you, folks, that you don't know what it is until you go do it. And I think I might have mentioned this in the last podcast, but get your setup, get everything the same, use all the same rods, all the same reels, all the same line, all the same jig heads as far as manufacturers and stuff, because not everything's created equal, all the same type of jig bodies, and you find a cove that goes from deeper water to shallower water, and you tie on singles, heavier, little lighter, little lighter, little lighter, and you mark a trail and you know your depths. You go down that trail, and when that thing starts hitting bottom, you write it down. You write it down. You write it down. You write it down. It's the only way you're going to know. I've never seen a crappie go down a foot to bite a lure, to bite a jig or anything, because their eyes are up here. You better be this far above them than that far below them. And you don't know what you're running until you find out what you're running.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do your homework. on that deal. But typically, double 30 seconds, you're looking at about 3.5 feet deep or something like that.
Double 16ths at a mile an hour.
Double 16ths at a mile an hour. I mean, I'm looking at 9 feet. Something like
3/32 and 1/16 at a mile an hour. Don't y'all love how he
Yeah,
does
it's about 12 feet. You know
how I know when I push, I take and like pull it out 1, 2, 3, and then set it down.
Yeah. Well, now here's another thing on that is how far behind the boat. Well, how far behind the boat you fishing? I said, I don't know.
Well, somebody asked me that the other day about you. They said, how far back is he fishing? And I'm like, man, he just throws it out and feels it. That's what I can tell you.
My general deal is, unless I'm fishing real heavyweight, which will go a mile, I throw it out as far as I can whip it out there, basically. Maybe give it a little bit of line there, stick it in the rod holder. The thing about it is if you do it the same way every time, now, that's the reason I handle all my rods too. Yeah. Okay, if I got a customer that throws it out half the distance, that jig's not going to be running as deep and stuff because of the angle. I mean, just simple math and stuff, getting that angle down. So it is scientific to an extent, but once you get your formulation down, you kind of have a good idea.
Yeah.
On that situation.
Well, it is. It's a task that you really.
And I didn't even take trigonometry.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're out there because a lot of times I'll just ask Jody, hey, what I need to fish? And he'll say it's double whatever, and I just tie it on there and go with it.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of closing this out. We've had horrible weather this year.
Yeah.
It's been just
muddy. It sleeted and snowed last night. I don't know if you got any here. I had a little bit on my truck this morning. It was up in Greensboro and stuff like that. But 3 days ago it was 70 degrees, and I was sweating out there fishing. Hopefully this is the last cold snap. Hopefully the rain is going to go away. You can see the deer tracks across Appalachia River right now. So it's been a challenge to try to find fish that want to bite.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So what do you think it's going to do to the spawn? Because I know everybody, and you give me your opinion, I'm going to give you mine.
Well, having the history on this lake that we do, typically I have found, not all the fish go at the same time and stuff like that, but it's usually, I feel, around the third week in March normally. I mean, that water temperature's got to get to 62 to 65 and be sustained. Length of day has a big thing. Lunar calendar has a big thing with it and stuff. These fish needed to slow down a little bit, so it doesn't hurt my feelings necessarily that it's cold today and it's going to be cold tonight and cold tomorrow.
I completely agree.
They need to slow down a little bit because this sounds so self-centered, but the guidebooks are full, and if it happens too quick, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
You're so, right. Now Thursday morning could be a challenge. We may have to look a little bit, let's say, south of where we went, as far as water depth. The fish might have pulled back a little bit, but at least the sun's helping us today, and tomorrow, hopefully trying to keep the water just somewhat warmer, and not shock them to death.
Well, that is something that I think you and I both agree with. We have caught a few 2-pound fish already, but I would say that if you looked at them, they were flat. Now, there's going to be some people that will say, oh yeah, these things are ready to go. I've heard some guys already say them and spawn and they're done. And I've done this for a long time. And I just don't think it, because I got an old gentleman who I love very much. He's in my neighborhood. His name is Mr. Wiley. His name is Wiley White. And Mr. Wiley loves the crappie fish, and he does that a little bit of catfishing. But Wiley would get up here on a full moon in April and sneak up here on this river and catch a boatload of fat fish with eggs in them. And so I agree. I think that it's good that they slow down, that the weather turned cool. I think it's going to take, for our derby, like a 2-pound, 8-ounce fish. And I think it's going to come this month. I think because some of the ones that I caught at the very end of this cold, before this cold got here, they were starting to fatten up and getting some shoulders on them and getting that look. Their tails were, and I actually, one of the DNR guys is a friend of mine. His name is Chris. He's a biologist here for Oconee, and he and I have talked about this a lot. And I'm going to try to get him here on one of these podcasts. He actually told me that the condition. In their testing and everything this year, that the condition for crappie on Oconee was really good. They were very happy. You know, but I think, yeah, it's not over yet. I think it's coming. I think that
yesterday when I was fishing with my customers and also my scouting trip after the fact in the afternoon, just kind of getting a chance to get out and explore a little bit. I had a couple of fish that were fairly thin, and they were actually males, obviously. You know, the rest of them females, just big old bulging egg bellies on them and stuff like that. And I mean, they're getting ready, but no, these fish were still probably at least a week and a half away, something like that. You know, wait on that water temperature to get right.
Yeah. So be of good cheer, all you crappie fishermen. We think that I've got logs that go back. You know, I didn't know this, but you might know this. I have been guiding on this lake since last century.
You are old, aren't you? Well, think about this, okay? I'm in my 7th year, and I remember the day that we sat in the golf shop there in Conyers and talked about it.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
God, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, 7 years ago.
I remember whenever you and Peanut were my customers, and y'all went down behind the tail race. I still got a picture of you. I didn't have a gray hair in my head, and
I had hair. I knew you were gonna get. I knew you were gonna go there.
You can't go sail up there.
Yeah.
So,
can't hold on to everything.
Yeah, you're a good man, Charlie Brown. All right, we're now going into the stripers. It's that time of the year. Next month in April, we'll be wide open chasing these things. So we're going to talk a little bit about dock shooting in our next podcast. It will come out the 1st of April. And we'll get on the stripers. And so, hey, Captain, thank you for being here. Always an excellent job. You are a cool dude. And thank you again for watching. Please reply in our comments section. Let us know how you like it. Let us know if there's anything you'd like to see. Let us know how horrible we're doing. We really would appreciate it. Until the 1st of April, we'll see you guys again. Thanks for watching.